Hello and welcome to the Midweek podcast of First Baptist Sweetwater. My name is Jerry Hendricks, and this is Teak Hamilton. Teak, do you know the significance of today?
Wednesday.
Good. Wrong answer.
Okay.
Teak, do you realize that Sunday we posted our 200th podcast?
I did not realize that.
I thought maybe you didn't, but I brought cookies
Nice.
to celebrate. Okay, they're leftover cookies, but they are
that
Valentine
I got
cookies. Yeah.
for a different meeting.
Well, you got to celebrate the best way that you can, Teak, and I wanted us to celebrate the fact that today is the 201st podcast of First Baptist Church Sweetwater, and I'm glad to be here with you. I've missed you.
Just so you know, these are the best kind of cookies. They're soft and gooey. They're so good. I don't necessarily like the little candy hearts, but I like the rest of them.
Let's move on because we're not going to agree on cookies.
Oh, that's true, because you like just the pink ones from McKay's.
Let's be honest, I like all cookies. Can't you tell?
Yep.
All right. Hey, I've missed you, man.
We had a snow out Wednesday.
Wow.
And so we didn't even have church last Wednesday. I bet people in the north that listen to us are kind of laughing at us right now.
There are people in the north that listen to us.
So they
Like Amarillo, Canyon, Lubbock.
So there you go. They're probably laughing.
That's
Because they do get a lot more snow than us.
Shout out to our friends in the Panhandle.
They get a lot more snow than us.
Oh, and incidentally, we're nearing 12,000 downloads in our time. Which I don't know if you were depending upon this in order to make a living,
Probably not good.
you probably have already quit by now. But we are undeterred.
Yeah.
We're going to do it if we're going to keep on doing this. Anyways, it's been fun. I was gone for 1 week. I was doing my basketball trip. Then we got snowed out, and so it has been an interesting start to the year.
Right.
And we are right now midway in our current series on relationships, some assembly required.
Right.
And Sunday, one of the things that I shared that I've kind of learned as I process this conversation for myself is that sometimes in relationships and being effective in developing relationships that we don't put in enough effort. One of the things I said is that in some assembly required, effort is more important than expertise. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I feel like we have too many excuses on why we don't develop relationships or work harder on the relationships that we have. In any way that you look at that, from the church to the people outside the church, family, friends, whatever. But anyways, a good time as we talked about Jonathan and David.
Yep. One of the things we talked about in our parents' small group a couple weeks ago was about how they're using technology to continue to keep those relationships. Because I'm bad about, if it's not me and Stacy, I'm not good at connecting with people, especially like family. And one of the ladies in there talked about how they use FaceTime regularly to connect because she's got kids and grandkids all around the U.S. and that's the way that she keeps in connection with them. That's interesting, different ways that technology is used to build those relationships and keep those relationships.
Yeah, I think for us too, even with adult children, it's kept us well connected over things that we're mutually interested in, whether it's our favorite team or our dog, or just funny things that happen. Sharon and Sarah are both teachers, and sometimes they have interesting epiphanies in class, and those are shared. But it does create a fun connection.
Do you FaceTime?
No.
That's interesting. Like, they talked about FaceTime. I'm like, I haven't ever even thought of doing FaceTime. But then one of the people in there said that they've got like coworkers who will FaceTime them at the job. Like, they'll just FaceTime and say, hey, so about this, instead of just calling them.
Right. I have noticed that some friends of mine who are grandparents, that they FaceTime their grandchildren regularly. And that was, so I think that probably is an app to use more than what I do, but we do it to problem solve.
Right.
So that's about the only time, honestly, that I can recall that we've used it.
Usually technology problem solving.
Or
Yep.
or I think when we've been on some trips where there was something interesting that we would want to share. Right.
Cool.
Anyways. So yeah, Jonathan and David, I don't know if you feel like you had a best friend growing up, but I know that I had some guys that I was close to. How about you?
I did. I had a lot of friends, but the one that I ended up being closest to was actually the preacher's son. And it didn't start off like a very normal friendship where we meet up. It was our moms had actually said, hey, the new preacher in town, he has a son, you're going to be picking him up every morning to go to school. And I said, I don't even know him, I don't want to. And then the response was always, I pay your gas, I pay your insurance. I said, yes, ma'am. And
so a prearranged friendship.
It was, and it ended up really, that first morning, really awkward. But after that, really good friends.
How old were you at that time?
I was 16.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
I grew up in a small town in a neighborhood where a lot of us rode bikes together. We played football together in the front yard and things like that. And so a lot of those guys through the years have been good friends. I've stayed in touch with. And one of my best friends, earliest best friends in ministry, actually was the youth minister at one of the churches here in Sweetwater. And so that's how I knew some people from here long before I got here. It had been some time, but at least there were names that I recognized and was familiar a little bit with Sweetwater.
And now you're recognizing more.
Exactly. I've kind of, yeah.
5 years will do that to you.
5 years. We probably should wait till next week to talk about that.
No, it's almost here.
Or the next. But
I mean, because if you count Advent, you've been here 5 years.
Yeah.
Maybe not officially, but you were
and
here.
And if we count the trips that y'all made to Monks, maybe even it would go up to seven. Be seven, like a 7-year relationship with
something
the church.
Like that.
Something like that.
But we didn't pay you for that. Well, I guess we did pay you for that.
Yeah, you
trips.
did,
we bought
indirectly.
Coffee.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Until you started coming over and not telling me. And I would not know you were there until like the next morning.
Well, it was late those nights.
Yeah, whatever. And you and I've been friends for a while now.
Mm-hmm. That goes back to Howard Payne, 2002, because I graduated there in 2003, and he did his class for Scott Stevens. So that's almost 20 years.
A lot of shout-outs going on today, but that's pretty cool that it kind of started there. We reconnected through ministry and then working together with camps, and then you asked me to fill in over here.
I mean, college. No, church. There we go. Cross Point.
Yeah, right. Well, so this last week, kind of where we're trying to go is understanding relationships as God has created us. Mm-hmm. We best understand those relationships when we understand that there is in creation, that there is a oneness to who God is. Mm-hmm. And we don't talk a lot about that. I think sometimes in church life, we assume that people understand that. And one of the reasons we don't talk about it is that it's the Trinity, and it is hard to understand.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not an easy concept to grasp.
There's a lot of, as I've been like reading lately, like just the way people approach the two natures of Jesus with divine and human. You know, I've always just been 100%, 100%, but there's two other main views on it that have come out in Christianity over the history, and then even thinking about the Trinity itself and this idea of the oneness theology also. And so, yeah, there's a lot there.
Teak dropping some theology on us today.
And I literally butchered all of that.
Well, but if we understand that and the very essence of creation and essence of being, right, then as we move through this world, we strive towards oneness. Mm-hmm. And that we're not talking about unity here. That's a different matter. But we are talking about oneness, and there's a oneness that occurs through relationship. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but one of the things that I've found is that there's people that I'm extremely close to that don't share the same opinions that I do.
Yes.
And it's true for you too?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. But one of the things that I found is that I don't know how other people respond to that, but for me, it helps me to stretch and to think outside and not get comfortable with my own thoughts and my own feelings or impressions about life or things that go on in the world.
Right. Yeah. I mean, politics is an easy one to think about, that there's people I don't share the exact same views with, but we're still good friends.
Right.
And you can talk about those things and not, become angry over them.
So the verse that we use Sunday is one that's in Proverbs, and a lot of people hear this throughout their life, is as iron sharpens iron, so one sharpens another. One person sharpens another. Those are the kind of relationships that are like that. That describes, I feel like, those kinds of relationships. Right. That it's not something that we all have to agree on or agree about. Because let's be honest, if that were the way that we were to develop and maintain relationships, we might not have many friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So particularly in today's world where there are so many opinions and ideas and feelings floating around out there.
And it's easier when you look at other people as created beings in the image of God to realize that it's okay for them to have their own opinions, and you can have yours, but you can still be in a relationship with each other.
Right. And I think for me, the hope is that in understanding and developing relationships, exerting the effort to develop those relationships, to embrace those that we can be friends to, that are maybe just in the rhythm of our life, but not someone that we see on a regular basis. A part of that is that we do that with an understanding that we do all benefit, but we want to recognize God's work in that relationship.
Yes.
And also what God's doing in the world. When you look at Jonathan and David, I feel like Jonathan had more to lose in that relationship than David. And David had far more to gain than Jonathan did. But Jonathan reached out to him and embraced him and gave him that special place because he recognized what God was doing in the world.
Right.
And that, if we could think in that way, it might change the way we view some of our relationships, or even people that we may have been antagonistic toward.
Right. I think when you go back to Jonathan and David, Jonathan had already lost being king, but there was still that opportunity that if David was gotten rid of, he could be king again.
Right.
But he was so in tune with what God's will was and where God was going that he was willing to take that side step and to just befriend David and become his best friend and to protect him so that God's will could continue.
Right. And in some ways, we even celebrated that.
Yeah.
Well, this next week, we take another turn in this relationship conversation, and we're going to talk about families, not just the family structure, but how we relate to one another as spouses and as children in a family. And I think it ought to be interesting. We aren't going to focus strictly on marriage because not everyone there on Sunday is going to be married.
Right.
But
not everybody has kids either.
Or has children, thank you. But we all have parents.
Yes, we do.
So it's going to be a good text. It's in Ephesians 5 if you want to read ahead and look in there. I think it starts on verse 21. Then the following week, the last week of this series, we're going to talk about relationships in the workplace and in the world. And so I think it's going to be good for us really to kind of consider this idea of the effort that it takes to develop and maintain healthy relationships. It's sort of a relational month with Valentine's Day.
In just a couple days.
Yeah, be my friend.
Okay.
So
if you give me those candy hearts, I won't be your friend.
You're getting candy hearts.
I don't want those.
It's on tap now. And anyway, let's don't start talking about food or candy or sweets.
2 weeks of relationship left. And then Wednesday is
Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday. And
the last Wednesday of the month.
Maybe not you, but I know I see a lot of posts, a lot more than when I first started here, about Ash Wednesday and about what it means to people. Because I think I won't say we're the exception, but Baptists are late to the party on Ash Wednesday, I would say. And so we're getting to the point where we're accepting that and making it a part of our spiritual development and our faith development. And it's a really, really good service. I mean, really special. We cancel our Wednesday night activities so that youth, children, everybody can be a part of that service. And
that's the only thing going on that night for us. And I did explain it a little bit more Sunday than sometimes I'm guilty of just assuming people know. But we've encouraged people that even if it's not been or not currently a part of your tradition, come and just participate at your level of comfort. And we're not offended if you just come and observe, and then let God speak to you through that experience. And you and I have talked about on this podcast about the deep meaning for us as we participate that as a part of the leaders on that. And so, but that'll be the last Wednesday in February at 6 p.m. in our worship center, and it's be a really wonderful time as we kind of turn a corner. And we start thinking and preparing for the next step of this journey and towards the Resurrection Sunday.
The question I get most often when I talk about Lent and Ash Wednesday is, isn't that Catholic? And my answer is, well, it's Christian. I mean, we've got our friends that we talk to the most about it and brainstorm with are Father Howes at the Episcopal Church and Ryan Strebeck over at the Methodist. I don't know.
Affectionately known as our associate pastor.
Associate Pastor Strebeck. And we talk about how to make Ash Wednesday, Palm Sunday, all those special and important and spiritual walks. So no, it's not just one denomination thing. It is a Christian thing.
One last thing, maybe.
Okay.
We're a little bit longer than normal today. I was just thinking about this, is that, and I don't mean to be irreverent with this, but if nothing else, these marks that we have throughout the year
Right.
on the Christian calendar, they help us wake up our faith. You know, and I know that I keep saying, and I have that rhythm personally where these have meaning for me, but it is intended, I believe, to help us to kind of open our eyes a bit wider,
Right.
listen a little bit more intently during these periods. And once we understand that as a part of our annual rhythm, then we look forward to these times,
Yes.
and they add more meaning
Right.
to our spiritual formation. So
Yes.
probably ought to stop there because I'm thinking of a lot of other things as well. But we'll be talking about some of this on Sunday. I hope you can join us 10:30 a.m. 213 East 3rd in our worship center. I'm going to be there.
I'll be there. See ya.